Watch the ride.
Hey everybody, so I'm down at Andy Sills Motorcycles again, because today, thanks to them, I'm going to take out this 1997 Triumph Daytona T595. But I just want to ride it to experience a bike that's 26 years old at this point. When this bike came out, I was 12. It should be a really interesting ride. Again, say thank you to Andy Sills. Let's just get out there and get going, because I want to ride this thing. I'm only had the sun for a couple of hours today. Oh, crikey. Okay, turn it on. Start her up. I have given this bike a bit of a warm already. The temperature gauge is going to come up in a minute. Let's just get going gently before we open this up. Wow, this is incredibly lent over feeling. I hope that camera is going to be okay. Wow, the gearing on it first is so long. So yes, the Triumph Daytona T595 1997. It was called a 595, and later on they called it a 955 because people didn't understand at the time that this actually wasn't a 600cc bike. It was closer to 1,000. This bike came out at a very interesting time. This is during the 90s when it was all about blades and super fast bikes and all that sort of stuff. This came out just before the R1 did, and the R1 kind of killed this bike. From my understanding, at the time, people were into fast, savage sports bikes. That's what it was all about. And if you have something come along that was a little bit more laid back, like this, it's 100 and, well, it claims to be 128 brake horsepower. As it turns out, it had 107 brake horsepower. Triumph just, well, it did in Italy and just lied. But yeah, it came out at a time that maybe it made sense that it wasn't the flavour of the month necessarily. However, as time's gone on, they say that this proves to be a much more relaxed, more rideable, usable bike in 2023. And also because it hasn't got the hype that the early R1s and things like that had, you can pick these up for, a few grand, not much at all in comparison. If you're new to my channel, hello, please consider hitting that subscribe button and supporting this channel through Patreon. I would really appreciate it. I'm a full-time YouTuber who doesn't take the ads, doesn't do any of that stuff, and gives you honest opinions, so the support of the audience is critical. Anyway, what you might not know is I'm 6'4", and this bike to me is kind of funny. I am so lent over, so far forward. I feel like you're not even going to see the dash in my GoPro. Oh, you can hear that triple. Oh, I want to get out onto a road that can actually open this up a bit. The Triumph triple inline threes sound great. And I will say that low down, this feels very agricultural, very, very rustic, basic, very clunky. But as soon as you get up above a couple of thousand RPM, it starts to sing. Now, you may have seen on my channel previously that I've actually reviewed lots of Triumphs until they kind of stopped lending me them and stopped replying to my emails. So I don't know why that is, but at least now I get to try something older. Something from the much older time of, because Triumph's been through some... What? Triumph's been through some big changes since this bike came out. They're maybe not the same company, as I understand it, as they were, is, whatever. As I say, it is 1,000cc, but it's only got 107, roughly, brake horsepower. My understanding of this was, as I say, literally, that they came out and said that it was 128, and it actually turned out to be 107. They also claimed it to be a bit lighter than it actually is. And they also didn't tune it quite as well as they could do, because if you do a little work to this, if you change a cam in it and a few other bits and pieces, you can actually get about 145 brake horsepower out of it. Another thing, because of my height and also this, the geometry of this bike, is that I am very much straight down on my wrists. I can feel that I'm having to hold my body weight up properly on this thing. Of course, this bike is pre-traction control, ABS and all that sort of stuff. And back in the 90s, I don't think people would have wanted it. People still don't want it. I cannot tell you how much time I've spent trying to get out of Portsmouth and getting stuck behind driver after driver doing 20 miles an hour. And Yeah, and people not going on the green lights and stuff. It's bizarre what's going on today. I tell you, this is a bike you actually have to properly control. It's very agricultural down the bottom of the box. So you're having to use throttle and clutch control very carefully because it's very sort of... It's only once it gets up to those revs a bit that it smooths out. It's great though, it feels really sort of brutal. The wing mirrors are basically non-adjustable because they're solid pieces of like foam rubber. I guess you might be able to move the glass within it, but I'm not going to try. I can see enough in it to do what I need. Okay, once you get up to like 50 in third, it all smooths out, the engine feels much better. It is comfy, it's just it's putting a lot of weight on my wrists, and I don't have the best back at the moment, but I have plenty of space. It's not uncomfortable yet. It's unusual to my usual seating position. That's one thing people need to be aware of. If you are used to an upright bike and then you get onto a very leant over bike, of course it's going to feel weird and different to you because it's such a different seating position. You just have to appreciate that. Accept it for what it is. It's part of this sort of bike. Also, this is a pretty heavy clutch. Hello, would you listen a little bit? Okay. Do, 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 do. It feels narrow, it feels very filterable. It doesn't feel massively heavy either so far. I mean, you can tell it's a chonk and you can tell the weight's low down. But to you, it doesn't necessarily feel like you're having to like, you know, really command that weight around it. You know, you can just lean over and it's going to kind of go where you want it to go. Well, I can tell you that fourth gear at 60 is very smooth. Like very smooth. There's very little feeling from the engine at all. The ride's quite nice too, even though the suspension, you know, it's an older type of suspension. It feels like it's absorbing the right bumps the right way and not being too jarring or not too soft. It feels like a very nice sort of tight bike. It doesn't feel as old as it is, apart from maybe the gearbox and the engine and the clutch. That kind of gives it away a little bit. I tell you what, these older bikes are not easy necessarily to ride around slower. They do really want you to grab a fistful of beans and just use the engine. What are you doing now? I do also like the fact that the speedo ends at 180. Back in the 90s, that used to be the game. Go and look at a bike and see where it ended. 180, 190, 200. And for some reason, people seem to think that if the speedo goes to 200, the thing's going to do 200. It is not. I don't actually know the top speed of this bike offhand, but I know that 107 brake horsepower, or even 128 if it had that, does not equal 180 mile an hour. I'm going to guess about 150, 140. Right, well, let's stop here, have a little closer look at the bike, and also sort these cameras out because that thing's a nightmare. Oh, I've got a carpal tunnel in my right hand. Okay, well, let's look through the controls. Pass light, high beam, low beam. Wait, no, side light, headlight, high beam, low beam. Horn, you got your indicators, start button, stop button. Everything a bike needs. Obviously, you've got a speed on this clock down here, RPMs up here, and temperature gauge down here. And you've got some lights to indicate engine oil, your neutral light, your fuel light, because it's got no gauge, and your engine warning light. There is a few things about these old bikes you should know. As I said, I think it was Bennett's, had a really good article talking about the history and all the problems that these had and the things you need to do to look after them and this and that. But at the end of the day, as long as you look after them right, keep the oil changed, apparently they go on for a long while. Well, as you can see, this bike is 26 years old and it looks absolutely fantastic. It's only got one little scuff down here which hasn't been repaired very well. That could be done much, much better if you gave that panel to a specialist. But otherwise, I mean, look at it. It looks fine. It looks great. Big old double disc on the front. These rims aren't original. These have been, well, they are original rims. I think they've been polished to, match him with the frame. Very interesting frame. Sort of this trellis welding on that is very nice. I'm imagining this hugger is not original either because it's like carbon. And I don't know if this is either. This is like I think this is faux carbon to replace in here. I mean, actually, it fits in very well. I'm also not normally a fan of yellow bikes, if I'm honest. But I actually think this yellow suits it really nicely. It's like a nice, sunny, happy yellow. Triumph Motorcycles Limited, Hinckley, England. Oh, someone spat it into that. Did read that there's a bit of a flat spot in the revs, around 5,000. Apparently it's something you can actually fix by knocking the cam timing forward a little bit. I think it's forward a little bit. You can also do some small other adjustments and replace some other bits and pieces to, as I say, really fettle with this engine and get 145 brake out it roughly. As I said, the suspension is forgiving, but it's still a sports bike. Now back to what I was saying about the gearing. I'm in like 4th now doing 60 and it's very comfortable, but it still rolls on very easily. It's got this great sort of mid-range power, which I think the triples are all known for. Depending on what type of engine you have, it gives you power in different places. The triples are known for giving you power in the mid-range. And the locals are known for giving you poop in the road. I was hoping these roads would not be wet, and it appears they are. And I know this bit looks dry, but it's because I know if this bit looks like this, it's way worse down there. So I might have to choose a different route. It's kind of tricky riding this bike a bit slower because if you're in first gear, it's a little bit jumpy on the throttle because it's going to be. In second gear, you have to be going a lot faster for it to make any sense. And the whole time, as I say, you're having to deal with that low down rumbliness before it gets into the singier notes. But this is charming in its old schoolness. If you were someone who doesn't like all the ABS and traction control and all the stuff that rides the bike for you, as some people like to say, then you would love this. If you want something that reminds you that you have to actually ride it, this is a good example. Let's check these brakes out. Okay, do you know what? They're pretty strong brakes. I'm having to be a little bit more careful with this than I am with the more modern bikes because there's no ABS and I don't want to drop this thing. Please don't get any more wet and muddy than this. Andy's gonna kill me. I don't want to get the bike dirty. Let's say huge thanks to Andy of Andy Sills. Absolutely amazing guy. If you need a bike, go down and see him in Portsmouth, Southsea. I'm very grateful to him for allowing me to ride something like this because a lot of the companies, dealers that is, they don't want to lend you a bike that's not their main brand. They, if they sell other bikes as well, they're okay occasionally, but generally they don't want you to ride anything other than the latest greatest from the main brand that pushes that dealership. So to get the option to just basically ride whatever's available in the store, I'm really grateful for that. Because this is what I call an experience ride. This is about the experience of riding a bike that I probably normally would never get the opportunity to ride. Why would I? You know, it's not something that someone's looking to promote necessarily, although obviously Andy will sell it eventually, but talking to him, he may not want to. I think he's going to sell it. Right, I think I just heard thunder, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to do my favourite route that I've managed to actually get to now, and then we'll head back into Portsmouth. Yep, there's that flat spot around 5,000 RPM. It picks up after that. Okay, now this is starting to make more sense. Oh, jiggled about. Oh God, look, that's not the corner entry you want. I have to say, riding this thing around, the amount of sort of, you know, finesse that you have to have, the understanding to just make it smoother. My God, people moan a lot about modern bikes. Oh, there's a little vibration here. Oh, it's got a little something there. Oh, my wrists hurt. This bike does not care about your wrists. And just as you want to start getting a bit more leery with it, 30. That's third. I'm in third. The seat on it, actually thinking about it right now, is surprisingly comfortable considering it's just an inch of foam. Oh, also, I didn't mention this earlier on, as you see, this is a single-sided swing arm, but one of the sad things is the fact that this humongous exhaust is right in front of that, so you can't actually even see the fact that it has a single-sided swing arm. Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Right, turning circle is hysterical. I'm really good at slow control, but I'm not used to it being this wide. Okay, clutch control for slow control is slightly harder than this, but I'm doing it. But as you can see, the turning circle on this thing is boatish. I did actually have to do like a 3-point turn in an alleyway to get it out of Andy's place, and my God, that was tricky. So I showed earlier on the front brakes on this, you know, they're pretty powerful. They do the job. The rear brake, however, is a little bit vague, and they have just changed the brake pads just. So it makes sense why they're not really sort of bedded in yet, but I'm just going to lean on the rear brake to slow down here. Starting now. Now. Pushing harder. Much. Having to use front brake. It's also got an absolutely tiny little indicator switch, and I think I may have missed it a couple of times trying to turn it off. This bike does get quite warm, I'll say that. I noticed some heat kicking out of it earlier on, and now it's so certainly there. What are you doing? Drive! Like reading a novel? Contemplating life's greatest questions? Because you shouldn't be, you should just be driving. You know, when a bike's been out as long as this, people get to know every single little problem that happens with them and the little tweaks and things you can do to improve them. Apparently another thing you can do to improve these is you drop the yokes down the forks just a tiny bit, and I think you stiffen the rear suspension, and you can make it much more precise feeling in its handling. Not that it feels bad, but I think I can understand what people were saying. It's very, I don't want to use the word crude, because it's not crude, it's just unsophisticated, unrefined. And these are good things to some people. Is that a Supra? Is that a Supra? Oh, also, this has a plastic tank on it. One of the things you should be aware of, to my understanding, is you don't want to be using high ethanol fuels in these tanks. They do not like it. Filterable. Those guys in the van seem to like it. Maybe it's the yellow, maybe it's the subtle sextolans. Maybe it's me. Maybe it wasn't the bike. Maybe it was me. Thank you very much. Yeah, right, this bike. Yeah, this bike does get very warm. I will say that. I can feel a lot of heat in my legs right now. Yes. Towards the front. Ah! Oh, it's the frame. The frame is really hot. It obviously takes a while for it to heat up, but that frame is toasty. Woohoo! In the winter, this thing would be amazing.
So there you go, there's my review, first ride, thoughts of the Triumph Daytona T595. The thing that struck me the most about this bike, if it represents bikes of the time, is just how much easier bikes are to ride now. When I jumped back onto my Yamaha XJ6 Diversion 2010, it just blew my mind how much lighter the clutch is, how much easier it is to ride the bike, how much more advanced the fuel injection system is. It's not that the old bikes are bad, they're very much of their time, and it's a character, as I say, of the bike that's quite enjoyable, but you do need to get to know that bike to ride it in the way that it likes. Thankfully, I've had so much experience riding different types of motorcycles that it kind of comes to me quite quickly, but yeah, it could take a little adjustment, but I think it's a good thing. As I said before, huge thanks to Andy Sills. I'll put some links for him down in the description. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button. If you want to help support this channel, please consider doing that through Patreon. Links are in the description as well. There's also other ways of supporting this channel with merch and other things. But otherwise, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.